Do you understand? Anyway, let's just watch Mr. Holy Toledo.
Holy Toledo. Governors have a whole lot of power, and there's all this talk of a Democratic wave. But the gubernatorial races nationwide should stand as a wake-up call for Democrats, because take a look here. The race raiders, governors post-2026 election, at least tilting to the Republicans. Look at this. A majority, 26. That is, at this point, the number of governors that are expected, at least tilting towards the Republican Party at this point. Democrats come in at just 20. The rest of the races are toss-up. Of course, you sum up to 50. And I will note that the Republicans right now hold a 26 to 24 gubernatorial seat advantage. So at this point, it doesn't look like Republicans on the net and the aggregate are actually going to lose any governorships. In fact, when you add in those toss-ups, they may gain. So this should stand as a major wake-up call to Democrats, because if there's a wave building, it has not, at least at this point, hit the state level when it comes to governorships.
And add to that, you point out that when it comes to governor's races, Democrats have had a bit of a problem over recent years.
Yeah, they have had a big problem recently. If you go back, the last time that Democrats held a majority of governorships was all the way back in 2010, and that streak is expected to continue. And I will note, I went all the way back through the record books, Kate Baldwin. I went all the way back through the record books. This is now the longest streak in which Democrats did not hold a majority of governorships in at least a century. This is a massive problem for Democrats, because as we mentioned at the top, a lot of the policy is determined on the state level. And if all of a sudden you can't actually lead a majority of governorships, the executive branch on the state level, that means Republicans are in fact forming and implementing most of the policies in the states, and therefore a lot of the policies nationwide.
Well, and the power of the governor also has to do with how the state legislature it looks. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, okay, so it's not just the governorships. How about those state legislatures, right? Okay, take a look here. Republicans have held a majority of state legislatures since 2012. And again, this is the longest.
So this is very significant, and it corresponds to the Republican agenda of sidestepping the legislative body and simply legislating through the state legislatures, where gerrymandering plays a significant advantage, more so than the Senate, obviously where the Senate, it doesn't exist, but even more so than the House of Representatives, right? Like, what's going on here, what's taking place here, is 100% a long-standing project of the Republican Party, which is to effectively neuter the main legislative branch, and then utilize the states to do your bidding. That's how, for example, even when Biden was in charge, they were able to push through so many anti-trans bills at the state level. They were able to enact a horrifying agenda of violence and cruelty towards marginalized communities, specifically through the state legislatures, and then have that maneuvering get tested in the courts, and then go all the way up to the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court is obviously pliant to the MAGA mission, where they would turn around and effectively change the constitutional interpretation. This is, sorry, I'm getting updates on the internet. Every good thing that my city does, the state legislature just undermines. Is annoying. Yeah. It is a very reliable tool in the tool belt. There was no F, chat. I just stopped talking. Yes, we're going to talk about Tucker being detained in a second, okay?
Such streak dating back at least a century, in which Republicans have held the majority of the state legislatures. In fact, for much of the 20th century, what you saw was Democrats actually held more state legislatures than Republicans did. And now it is the exact opposite. And if you go state legislature by state legislature, at this point, it seems likely, of course, still uncertain, since we have a number of months until November elections, that Republicans will continue the streak of holding the majority of state legislatures, continue their streak of holding the majority of governorships, and therefore Democrats will be locked out of holding a power in positions that really do determine a lot of the policy nationwide. As I said, this should stand as a wake-up call for Democrats, because at this point, Republicans look like they're going to continue to hold the majority of governorships nationwide.
A very interesting look at this. It's good to see you here. Thanks.
Nice to see you, Kate.
It appears, at least for now, that a bipartisan meeting of governors at the White House is back on after President Trump initially only invited Republican governors, but he's still blocking 2 Democratic governors from a separate dinner and attacking the GOP chair of the National Governors Association, a very conservative Republican named Kevin Stitt, as a rhino. Let's bring in Democratic Governor Andy Beshear of Kentucky to discuss it all. Governor, there's a lot of confusion over whether Democratic governors are still invited to attend this bipartisan meeting and dinner at the White House. Kevin Stitt, the Oklahoma governor and the chair of the National Governors Association, seemed to say that you and your fellow Democrats are invited, but then the president went on social media and attacked him. What's your understanding?
How sensitive are House/Senate races to governorship votes? So the gubernatorial race is actually one of the few races that's kind of decoupled from party loyalty, even though it obviously plays a massive role in the party advancing its interests, in the party advancing its agenda. Andy Beshear is actually a perfect example of this. Deep red state, but he's deep blue. He's uncompromising on protecting trans people and stuff like that. So, like, it actually plays a really big role in how the parties operate. But at the level of the voter, when they're going out and voting for a governor, it's a much more personal decision. It's a much more personal decision, and it's entirely around, like, what the governor is going to do, like how the governor pitches why you have to vote for him. Okay? The reason why I say this is because there are plenty of instances where you'll have a red state with a blue governor, and even more instances where you have a blue state with a red governor, right? So the governor has tremendous power over the state and over the state legislature, the power of the veto, the power to basically run it like a president, like a mini president. And yet, regardless of that, there are plenty of instances where, you know, you have more moderate red governors in blue states, and you have blue governors in red states.
Are you invited to these events? Are you planning on going?
It's just a lot of drama, and it's unnecessary. You know, governors wake up every day focused on getting results, on creating better jobs, creating safer communities, expanding access to health care, improving our public schools. And this meeting is an annual bipartisan tradition where we try to push our differences aside and talk about how we move forward in those areas. Yet the president has just turned it into drama, inviting and disinviting others. It no longer looks like it's going to be productive at all. At this point, I'm not going. If you're not going to invite all the Democratic governors, this chair of the DGA isn't going to be there.
So just for the record, it's Jared Polis of Colorado and Wes Moore of Maryland who are the 2 Democrats not invited. Are you worried at all that you not going will ultimately hurt your constituents in any way, denying you an opportunity to bring up your concerns with the president directly?
We've been able to communicate with this administration for our concerns, but there's a time when you have to stand up against the drama of a president that's turned an annual bipartisan tradition and is treating it like he's a 12-year-old and it's his birthday party, inviting and disinviting people, lashing out at others. You know, the American people admittedly don't care about this dinner. They don't care necessarily about the meeting. They care about whether you're improving their lives, decreasing costs, trying to address their everyday challenges. So that's what I'm going to be focused on.
For the record, I've had 2 12-year-olds, and neither of them would have ever done that. The administration is increasingly focused on the midterms. Earlier in the show, we played some sound from DHS Secretary Kristi Noem talking about making sure the right people are voting and electing the right leaders. Between that and the DOJ demanding voter information from states and the president saying he plans to implement voter ID requirements even without congressional approval, are you worried as a governor about what is going to happen at the midterms?
Well, it's my job to be worried. Kristi Noem's statements are wild and they are un-American. The president talking about not federalizing elections. He first said Republicans should take over elections in certain states. That is anti-democracy. But Democratic governors and AGs are ready to stand up and make sure we have full and fair elections. But I'll say this. If you try to intimidate the American people, especially when it comes to something so foundational as voting, I think you're underestimating them. I think you'd see huge lines and people singing. You know, people want to be Americans first, and Democrats or Republicans second, third, or fourth. You put our democracy at jeopardy. You try to intimidate them from voting, and they will step up and protect this country.
But what are you specifically talking about doing if there is an issue?
Well, the first thing we do is go to court. That's what the courts are for. I've taken on this Trump administration despite being in a Trump plus 31 state over and over and over, and we've been winning. When they've tried to take the personal information of our citizens so that they can use it as they wish, we stood up to them. When they tried to cancel funding so that we could create a warning system in eastern Kentucky for the next time it would flood, we stood up to them. Time and time again, they've overreached, like trying to send National Guard from Texas to Illinois. We were a part of that lawsuit, standing up and winning for the American people.
You talk about needing FEMA in the case of a natural disaster of any sort. Are you worried about Senate Democrats blocking DHS funding in this latest government shutdown standoff?
Well, hopefully it won't last too long because FEMA is incredibly important and, I will admit, is operating pretty well under this president, at least the people on the ground that are helping people after the natural disasters. But ICE is out of control. They have an American body count. They have injured and wrongfully shot others. They have 2 agents that are being investigated for perjury, and their leadership attacks anyone involved in an altercation with ICE as domestic terrorists before they even know the information. This is a group that thinks they can barge into an American's home with an administrative warrant. We have to stand up for them, and Democrats should be using their leverage to try to get reform and retraining.
So you're the new chairman of the DGA, as you alluded to. You had an op-ed in the New York Times talking about how the focus of the Democratic Party must return to creating better jobs, more affordable and accessible health care, safer roads and bridges, education, communities where people feel safer. I have to ask, it's no secret you're weighing a potential presidential run in 2028. Do you think Democrats right now are conveying the message that you laid out in that New York Times op-ed? And how do you respond to a Democratic voter who might say, I like you, I like your track record in a red state or red Commonwealth, but you're too soft-spoken?
Well, first, yes, that message is working. Look at Abigail Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill, who ran great campaigns in races that should have been structurally difficult. And they both won by double digits. You know, the DGA and our candidates are winning.
Andy Bashar is the pleasant face to the establishment liberalism. Okay? Like he is in the tank for the establishment wing of the party. But because of his background being a blue governor, an seemingly uncompromising blue governor in a red state, he gets to be like the principal defender of the Spanbergers of the Democratic Party, and that's what he's doing here, right? He is advocating from a position of real influence too, right? Because of the reasons that I just mentioned. He is advocating for the establishment, neoliberal, Democratic wing of the party, saying like, we need more CIA agents, basically. You have to treat this with the same response that you treat like a Gavin Newsom, right? Gavin Newsom says this stuff in a deep blue state. And therefore it's easier to fucking disparage. But when Andy Bashar says this, he's saying this from a red state. So obviously people pay attention to it. He probably is for this reason, he's probably one of the scariest individuals that can make this argument, a convincing argument that you have to do more moderate centrism. You have to just reform ICE, not abolish it, all this stuff. Because see, I'm in a red state. I'm I'm obviously dominant in a red state. And the reason why I'm dominant in a red state is because I compromise on these issues, right? Except the reality of the matter is the reason why he's dominant in his state is because he's a dynastic name in the state. Like his father was also a recognizable individual. That's part of the reason why he's allowed to be an uncompromising figure of sorts. And has developed he's developed enough like voter loyalty. People like his services, his constituent services. His narrative doesn't actually work in all these other states. Okay?
Everywhere. For me, I believe that the American people want stability, that Donald Trump is exhausting. Many Americans feel like the pendulum swung too far during the Biden administration and it swung way too far during the Trump administration. And what they want is an America
a reasonable, moderate centrist
where they can wake up every morning and not be worried about its future. And I think they want leadership that's focused on them, on whether they make enough money to not only afford their groceries, but take their kids on that vacation that they went on as kids. That young couple wants to be able to afford their first home around the same age as their parents. People want to feel safe in their communities, believe their kids are going to great public schools. Those are the types of things that I think are not only appealing to the American people, but maybe can help us heal, to recognize that most of our...
Yeah. Okay, it's fucking bullshit. All right. Hakeem Jeffries asked point blank about Bernie Sanders endorsing progressive challengers to House races. He's going to have a bad argument here as well. Now, of course, before we get to that, I do want to talk about a complimentary piece to this conversation that is taking place right now. The New York Times went and asked a bunch of Democratic Party voters, lifelong Democratic Party voters, people who voted for the Democrats in the past, how they feel about the current state of affairs in the Democratic Party. And I think it's very interesting because there are a lot more people in the base.
Do you have one last question?
There are a lot more people in the base of the Democratic Party who have opinions. So we're going to get to the New York Times piece. What word would you use to describe the Democratic Party? Okay, this is an interactive piece from the New York Times. And virtually every single person from every age group that they asked this question to said the same shit. Michael, 56, book dealer, paralyzed. Terrell, 68, retired, sold out. Afraid. Denise, 57, account manager. This is an opinion editorial piece called America in Focus. And the main takeaway was show up for us. 13 Democratic voters on Trump, ICE, and their frustrations with the Democratic Party. Donald Trump's second presidency has remade American life in just a year. Many Democrats and others worry about the erosion of civil rights, cuts to social safety net, and the significant aggressive increase in deportations across the country. Amid major debates among activists, pundits, and elected officials about what direction the party should take, Times Opinion assembled 13 Democratic and Democratic-leaning voters to ask how the party is handling the moment, what changes and reprioritizations they want to see, and what kind of Democrats are standing out. Participants in our group weren't unclear about what the party stands for, the greater good and the protection of civil rights, but many also expressed dissatisfaction with a lack of resolve this past year during shutdown fights as well as more broadly. Again, every single pressure point that I have fucking yelled at the Democrats over, these guys also feel the same way. And these guys aren't HasanAbi heads. This is the New York Times, people. This is the establishment newspaper. It's not like we're not reading Jacobin, okay? We're reading the New York Times. I need you to understand. Yeah, they're too young to be HasanAbi heads. Even recognizing that there isn't much Democrats can do out of power, people wanted more action and more aggression, especially if and when the Democrats take power again. You will hear the same exact sentiment that we express in here every single day being expressed by people who are nowhere near the demographics of being in this community. They're not card-carrying Democratic Socialists of America party members. But they share the same enmity and the same anger that we all do. Okay? In particular, they wanted candidates who were young, progressive and from a more modest or working class background with clear and simple messages. And as far as the Democrats who are standing out to these people, Jasmine Crockett, Pete Buttigieg, Zohran Mamdani, Gavin Newsom, many of them are the ones who've made a point in appearing in combative media environments, invoking a famous Michelle Obama quote, "After the past few years, these voters no longer want a party that goes high." Okay? So these are the participants. There's like two 36-year-olds in there. Okay? One 29-year-old in there, Arizona, Asian, independent, computer science. 33, Mike is from North Carolina, white, Democrat, telecoms. Okay? There's a 33-year-old black Democrat voter, career coach from Michigan. But here is the first question that they ask. Fill in the blank for me. I'm feeling bleep about the way things are going in the country these days. Okay? Confused about the direction the country's going. Frustrated, upset and concerned, discouraged, strongly concerned, terrified and angry, disappointed, pessimistic. I was going to say frustrated, horrified, tired and sad and upset. Now, this makes sense. When the Republicans are in charge, of course, Democrats are going to say this kind of stuff. Anybody have a positive word? No, I don't. No, absolutely not. These are tough words, Candy. Let me start with you. You said frustrated. Tell me why. I know people who are immigrants. So just what's going on with immigration and even being myself a U.S. citizen, I'm concerned about getting pulled over and shot and killed, or one of my family members is going to get discriminated against. I'm scared to leave my home. I already work at home. Now I feel like I have to stay here because I'm so scared. People feel paralyzed because of the ICE activities that are taking place all around the country, right? Have any other people have had an experience like Candy's? My family's all immigrants. We're all citizens, but I worry about my parents going out. They learned English later in their lives. I've heard that ICE is near where we live. I'm wondering if I have to have them carry their passports around when they need to go get groceries and things like that. Lauren from Iowa says, I have family members who are immigrants. That concerns me that even though they're citizens, they could be out doing normal day-to-day things, especially with the kids in tow, and just be yanked off the street, and we wouldn't be able to intervene in any way. Yeah, I just feel we're at the point now that we're being treated like animals. I'm Puerto Rican. I speak full Spanish, so sometimes I'm scared to go out and speak my native language. My mother, I'm afraid for her because she's older. They might just judge her by the way she looks, so I'm very, very frustrated. Moderator says, I want to hear from some other folks. Like, what was on your mind when you said all the words that people said, discouraged, frustrated, terrified, etc.? People who are maybe not immigrants, but minorities and things like that are just being targeted. There's a lot in my community about ICE coming and pulling over people. And it's disheartening, actually. Christian, you said discouraged. One, a lot of the economic policies that have been put in place, looking at the job market, looking at the numbers that just came out today, worst number in years. It feels just economically, there's no real light at the end of the tunnel. The immigration policies are also a disaster, and they're inhumane. Socially, some people have just embraced being blatantly racist, whether it's towards immigrants, whether it's towards African Americans. It's been normalized, not to say it ever, not to say it ever fully went away, but we've just regressed. Katie says, I wake up in the morning and I look at my phone and it's another headline. I saw something on Facebook the other day that was from The Onion, and I had to double check to make sure that that was where it came from, because in reality that we're living right now, it's hard to tell the difference between real life and satire, which is not a good place to be in. I would say that I've been discouraged since 2016, Trump's first term. Nothing has changed since then. It's gotten worse and worse and worse. Now people are being shot in the street, and it's like, well, how far is it going to go now? It's just not right. Until about 10 years ago, I used to think that things would be a little better every year or over time. Now it just seems, for the most part, the government is putting into place policies that are meant to take advantage of people who need the most help and to benefit the people who are well off. How do you get ahead when this is the situation? How do you, Kaya? How do you get ahead when this is the situation, huh? How? Oh, you like being noticed. Is that what it is? That's what it is. Look at her tail. Look at her little tail wag. You just like being noticed. This is how we get ahead. Hello. Hello. Do we still fully don't know what's happening in the concentration camps, and they're literally destroying cameras and videos on hard drives? I know. She wants the soundboard. Here, look at this. Kaya, place. I now officially have a place button. Who's your little lady? Okay, come here. Come here. Come here. Just little butt scratches. Hello. 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 He can't keep getting away with it? Yeah, finally I do. Now I officially have a button where I electrocute Kaya. Yeah, isn't that wonderful? Would have been a good edgelord. Anyway, I feel the same way. I feel sorry for the people that are going through this in their lives. I know it because I'm fair. It's not just right that we're ruled by the. So everybody agrees with characterization. The question is, America's best days behind us, ahead of us, or happening now? Everybody said, wait, is it effing again? Oh, I didn't even realize that it was effing. I'm being throttled again. Kaya's revenge. Okay, you got to get out of there, though. Come on. Back up. Back up, lady. ISP hates the soundboard, too. Yeah, your voice gets wobbly and laggy, but we never drop or anything. Okay, good. You can't stand there, lady. You can't stand there, because unfortunately, I don't want to drive over you. You use too much power on the place button? Yeah, to electrocute it with the Tesla coils. It fried my electricity grid. They all say it's behind us. None of them says America's best days are ahead of us. Once he's out of office, what's going to happen on some of the things that people have been bringing up tonight? Immigration, economic policy, women's rights, gay rights. I say it entirely depends on what the party has power, on what party has power and who gets elected. I don't know if we're going to be living in a pendulum situation for years and years and years after this, where one party does these things and the next party tries to undo it, and on and on. My concern is that the things that the Republicans are doing now, they're going to be hard to undo. Yeah, it depends on who comes into power next, I guess. But if they don't wield it as brazenly as he's wielding it to undo some of the things that he's doing without asking the voters what we want to do or asking anybody besides just whatever he wants to do, the Democrats are too afraid to do anything, I feel like. So if they come into power, they've got to do something. Okay? Michael from Pennsylvania is now out. Michael from North Carolina is now in, for the record. It's over. We have a new Michael now. And you will see more and more of Michael from North Carolina cooking in ways that Michael from Pennsylvania never could. Like, if we're being real. RIP to Michael from Pennsylvania. Long live the new Michael. Michael 2, Revenge of the Michaels. Yeah. Shots fired? Yeah, shots fired. Okay. How often do you feel like you're thinking about politics and thinking about Donald Trump? I mean, the Donald Trump and talking about politics, I'm skipping. Do you talk to somebody about politics at least once a day? All day for me because of Instagram. Every day, Instagram, TikTok. I used to be pretty apolitical. I wasn't really interested in as much. And then 2024 came around. I just found myself super interested, and I'm following state reps and senators and things that I was never really into much before. I keep up with it every day, but don't necessarily talk about it every day. For the most part, everyone in my life I know is reading the same stuff I am. No point in preaching to the choir. How do you feel Trump's second term compares to his first? Worse. Definitely worse. When you imagine a potential second term, it's worse than I expected. I didn't think it would be this bad because I thought there'd be checks and balances like we were always told. Like, basically, most of the things that you are feeling, these people are also feeling. It's very common. This is a very common feeling. This is why I always say, you're not alone. And I have experienced this in the real world, where I go to these events, I go to these protests, I go to these marches, I go to like places where liberals congregate, right? And not even just liberals, but like independents, older people in general. And they have the same exact animosity, both towards the way that the Republicans are handling the situation, hatred towards Donald Trump, but then anger and resentment towards the Democrats as well. Okay. This is important to understand. It's important to understand because you're not alone in this anger. And yet there is an entire media ecosystem dedicated to telling you, no, things are great. The Democrats are actually going to win by small margins, and then they're going to do business as usual politics, and you're going to like it. We're going to move and pivot towards moderation again and again and again. If you pivot towards moderation at a time when Republicans are going far right, then all you have is a center right to far right existence. We cannot do that. We must do away with this mentality. Okay? And trust me, the average liberal sentiment is closer to yours than you ever could have imagined. In 2016, resistance liberalism took hold. It took root. And therefore, by 2020, Bernie Sanders' movement and momentum was quickly packed up. By the time the primaries were in effect, a lot of the establishment liberals, establishment Democrats were like leaning into the Bernie-crat message, some of those policies, but they didn't actually have any investment in it whatsoever. And Obama came in and he cleared the field for Joe Biden. And we all know the rest is history, right? So there are a lot of these people that if you talk to your liberal, centrist, lifelong Democrat voter parents and people in your life, you will realize that many of them, even if they say like they like Gavin Newsom or whatever, they are demanding more from the Democrats. They want more from the Democrats. They want the Democrats to actually fight. Some of them think, okay, well, Gavin Newsom is putting on a fight. Jasmine Crockett is putting on a fight because they're aesthetically presenting themselves as putting on a fight. Okay? But many of them want more in terms of policy. It is upon us to explain to them that it's not just about the aesthetics of putting on a fight. It's not just about the style, but it's also about the substance. Putting on a substantive fight means having a more radical vision for change, being unafraid to push the Democrats in the appropriate direction to win elections. Okay? And this is, this was a very important takeaway. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Democratic Party. If you had to use one or two words to describe the Democratic Party, what would you pick? Spineless, more complacent than I thought they would be. Okay? Paralyzed, afraid, incompetent, I guess suffocated or given up. Our local government's trying to do a lot, but then in the House and the Senate, they're getting voted against the Republican majority. So, sold out. As a 68-year-old. A 68-year-old saying sold out. I just feel we were never being governed. We're being looted. The Democratic Party lines their pockets and they created this mess. I do like what Trump's doing in terms of the terrorists. They've been milking us for God knows when. Now, that last part is not so great. Okay? What other words would people use to describe the Democrats? Sellouts and suckers. Immobilized. Can I say no balls? No cojones. I will say that there are a large number of young Democrats that are really starting to climb the ranks in the party that are motivated. I'm hoping that word starts to take over a little more. Like, this is like, I mean, I could have, this is, if I got an article written like this, people would understandably say I paid for it. Like, these are paid actors. So I'm glad that it's coming from the establishment newspaper, the New York fucking Times. Okay? I said, this tracks 100% with what I've seen on the streets from the No Kings protest to the resistance against ICE. People are very mad at their party. Dems on here are oblivious to the anger. They're speaking into an echo chamber of consultants who tell them what they want to hear. Okay? And it's not just consultants. Matt Iglesias wrote this in October admitting the groups is something he heard in Washington. Now he writes about the groups for his Washington audience. He doesn't realize he's building the echo chamber. This is a major problem. The Democratic Party's electeds want to hear from people that agree with them. And there are plenty of pliant, consultants and analysts that will give them what they want to hear. Matt Iglesias is one of the worst versions of this. Okay? The DNC has bubbled themselves in to this weird echo chamber where they are constantly demanding a steady flow of policy papers and focus groups that tell them the people demand a moderate agenda. The people demand a moderate agenda. And it's fucking crazy because that moderate agenda is seen as dog shit because it failed.
The leader of the Democrats in the House is saying something that is in complete contravention to an overwhelming majority of his own voter base, let alone the growing number of independents that are leaving this party for the very attitude that we're talking about with the Hasan thing. The entitlement, the entitlement to anti-democracy. Like, sit with that for a second. You have Hakeem Jeffries there, who is getting pissy that Wajahat Ali is trying to press him on the fact that he's taking blood money from a genocidal right-wing group, when you have a poll from around 6 months ago at this point in Gallup that showed that it's like something like 4%, 5%, single digits of Democratic voters that support Israel's military action in Gaza. The overwhelming majority are opposed to it. The majority believe it's genocide.
Yeah. Exactly. We watched that Wajahat Ali debate between him and Hakeem Jeffries the other day. It's disastrous. It's fucking disastrous. Cinemarxism is right. He says, it's actually so frustrating how often so many conversations, even on the left, assume that the Democrats are even trying to represent voters' wishes. They don't represent voters. They represent the capitalists. The sooner we realize and build power for ourselves, the better. This is why it's important to actually establish outside pressure mechanisms, whether it be labor unions, community organizing, tenant unions. By the way, shouts out to the new initiative in Kansas City for tenants unions. Cinemarxism is reminding me of that. But it's true. It's true. The DSA is another component of this as well. I'm never going to disparage people that are trying to actively reshape the Democratic Party in a direction that is beneficial for the working class's interests. Okay, we got to do away with business as usual politics in the Democratic Party. We got to do away with establishment, neoliberal politics in general. It is completely ridiculous. They are the reason. You should remind people that they are the reason why Kamala Harris lost, okay? Like, Kamala Harris lost for this reason. They did it. They did everything right, okay? They followed Matt Iglesias' agenda to a T. They followed David Shorism. They followed Jonathan Chait. All of these guys were writing think pieces on how wonderful the Democrats were operating, how great Kamala Harris was in their pivot to centrism. Now, of course, after the spectacular failure, they're trying to rewrite history to make it seem like they didn't pivot to the fucking middle hard enough. They did. They did. They did everything right, and they still lost every single fucking swing state. So clearly, that's not working. Okay, it's the often misattributed Einstein quote, like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing a million times over and expecting different results. That's literally just the Democratic Party's politics, doing it over and over again, pivoting to the center over and over again, pivoting to the center endlessly and expecting a victory. I work for Unite here, the labor union. I work in the back office, but we have periodical meetings about political strategy, and my union leadership right now are way, way, way more radicalized than what they were doing in 2024. My union president said moderate Democrats aren't enough, and we need even more power outside the Democratic Party. Good. Because major labor unions, let's be real, have also been sheepdogs for the establishment Democrats for the most part, and I'm glad that that's changing too. Good. It's a necessity. Like, no disrespect. I love the labor unions. I ride for the labor unions, but it's not a secret that the labor unions have also kind of been on the Democratic Party agenda, and they've lost the rank and file whipping power that they have for that reason. Now, not all unions are the same. I'm, of course, talking about like IBEW, the rank and filers that have moved in the rightward direction, voting for fucking the Republican Party and voting for Trump in particular. Same with the Teamsters, where there's a lot of rank and filers that have also done that. Like, part of that reason is because the Democrats are not seen to be defending the rights of the working class, the labor unions in general, their interests. And I've thought a lot about this, okay? I have thought a lot about this. Now you speak of labor union correctly. No more authoritarian, Hasan, please. Wait, what? I don't know what you're saying. Anyway, I thought a lot about this. There was a MS Now contributor that actually spoke on this, where he was like, Joe Biden was one of the best fucking Democrats for labor unions overall. He like walked the picket line, all true things. But why is it that the rank and filers are still hyper-focusing on culture war narratives and operating under the assumption that the Democrats are no longer invested in defending labor unions and union power in general, or defending labor power in general? And that's because regular people obviously, understandably, measure the Democratic Party as one big institution. They measure the Democratic Party on the Democratic Party's weakest members. Because at the end of the day, the rotating villain structure that exists within the party and the lack of interest in whipping those people at the top of the party is what causes there to be a diluted and much weaker agenda for labor unions. If you don't get card check at the end of the day, for example, right, something that unions have demanded for a very long time, it doesn't matter if Joe Biden is walking the picket line. It's symbolically important. But at the end of the day, if you don't get card check, because there's plenty of spoilers within the Democratic Party's infrastructure, the Democratic Party's ecosystem, then all people see is you not getting these, important pieces of legislation across the finish line. From their perspective, you didn't do that for them, right? You didn't do that for them at all. So why the fuck should they think that you're pro-labor? It makes sense. They don't make the harm reduction argument internally. They never make the harm reduction argument. Most normal people do not think about harm reduction. This is something that I'm trying to get across, right? They want an agenda that you are championing to go across the finish line, okay? It's that simple. We got to do away with the rotating villains. We have to whip them. We have to punish them. We have to punish them if they step out of line. We have to have more organizational discipline within the structure of the Democratic Party, even for the modest social democratic gains. Okay? That's it. And a big component of doing away with that ecosystem is by addressing this false notion that the only way to have this big tent Democratic Party is by running establishment candidates, or by running candidates that actually adorn the moniker of progress and then do away with that progress when they're in power. The greatest example I can give you is Marie Concentration Camp Perez, a person that literally ran on like a Justice Democrat style campaign and then quickly became a part of the Problem Solvers Caucus, a self-declared group of individuals that play the role of spoilers from within the Democratic Party. Okay? John Fetterman is another great example of this. John Fetterman saying, well, I flipped the red area. Yeah, bitch, you flipped it by lying about being progressive. It's crazy. You prove that you don't actually have to look like you're compromised. You won with a progressive campaign, a straightforwardly progressive campaign, even when you had fucking brain damage. Like, people literally were like, I will vote for a stroke victim as long as they are progressive enough. And for some, maybe it was because you looked the part of an ogre in Western Pennsylvania, and they were like, oh, he looks like me, he talks like me. I don't really care if he's actually, woke or whatever. But the reality of the matter is, you were woke when you ran. You were woke when you won. When you ran and when you won. It's that simple. Consider this analogy. You and your family share a car. A family friend asks to borrow the car. You say no. Your family gives him the keys anyway. He brings it back and the brakes were swapped. You say you should pay to fix the brakes. Some of your family members say, let it go. The friend takes the car again, T-bones the minivan, kills the family. Insurance makes you pay. Hashtag DNC. Dark. My rich liberal wine aunt who campaigned for Hillary in 2016 was wearing an Obama 2028 shirt at Christmas, texted me and asked to borrow my copy of the People's History of the United States and is posting Woody Guthrie Coates songs on her Facebook. The tide is shifting. Yes, it's happening all around us. I swear to God, it's not me on copium. The Democrats in charge are not responding to it, but the pressure is there. The momentum is there. The momentum is on our side because people have seen far too many losses at this point. It's getting there where people are like, okay, well, we did centrism over and over again. You sold us this notion, this false notion that centrism is going to actually bring us electoral victories, and it only brought us electoral defeat. I think the second loss to Donald Trump really worked to destroy the second defeat that the establishment Democrats had against Trump as well, when Trump was even more incompetent in the first round, made Democrat voters realize that the pivot to the center narratives are just simply a failure. And they're seeing it on their own, by the way. It's not like they're seeing it because they all magically became HasanAbi heads. Right? They're not watching me. They might not even fucking like me if they know who I am. Many of them don't. And yet, they agree with what we have seen for years. Okay? Because at the end of the day, if there's one principle that motivates every single person, from the blue dog Democrats down to the fucking Maoist third worldists who don't even want to vote, it is that they do not want to see Republican fascists in power. Okay? That is the one uniting principle that brings all of us together from all different walks of life, from different ethnic backgrounds, from different lived experiences. Fuck it, even people who are like small business tyrants, right? There are people who are responsible for the wages of others, who are a part of the ownership class in some meaningful capacity, who still go, I don't want a fucking Republican in charge, man. It is too much instability. It's too much violence. I don't want to see it. That's it. HasanAbi heads, we need a better name. Yeah, parasocialists. That is the one uniting principle. We do not want Republicans elected, okay? That's part of the reason why a lot of these fucking centrist neoliberals will consistently say that I want Republicans elected because, it's going to be a tremendous opportunity for me to farm fucking subscriptions or some shit. Like they have to like find a way to be like, Hasan actually doesn't hate Republicans. We, on the other hand, who tell you every 4 years that we have to become more like the Republicans in order to defeat the Republicans, we actually truly hate the Republicans. It's fucking bullshit. It's bullshit. My resentment for the Democrats come from their closeness to the Republicans, okay? It's bad politics and it's bad policy. I don't want Republicans in charge. I don't want Republicans to ever win another election ever again. Centrists do not care about that. It's ridiculous. But fear not. It seems like a lot of people are also on the same wavelength. Some of them might be misguided and think that, Gavin Newsom represents that change. And, we must do away with that notion. I think like when push comes to shove and when people actually realize that Gavin Newsom is a representative of that establishment wing of the party, they will move away from that. Okay. But but getting back to this article now, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Democratic Party. We already covered this. What other words? Sellouts. We already covered this. During the recruitment for this group, everyone identified in some way as being a Democrat or leaning towards Democrats. Tell me, what does the Democratic Party stand for? So I grew up in Pittsburgh, very blue collar town. My whole family was that way. But then even as I got old enough to make my own choices, I just identified more with the Democratic Party because I didn't feel very Republican. I grew up in a conservative household, not a liberal household. I've always felt like more than not that the Democrats supported policy programs that were for the greater good that would help move people up and forward. Whereas Republicans, more than not, just said, well, you're on your own. The Republicans, really just want to help the rich get richer. For me, it's always been more about the greater good and being accepting of everyone, no matter who you are. There's a big civil rights component. One analogy I've heard is that Democrats would rather 10 kids get free lunch than say, even if 9 don't need it, but then that one needs it, versus the Republicans will say, oh, well, there's 9 kids who are getting free lunch. They'd rather the one person starve. It's a pretty interesting way to put it, but yeah. People use words like spineless, weak, scared, afraid. What are they afraid of? It seems like to me they're scared to speak up. I've heard Democrats speak up when they're interviewing these senators on television about the killings in Minnesota. I mean, they are speaking their mind. They can talk the talk, but can they walk the walk? And I'm hoping that they will. The Democrats are really good at speaking when they want to, but they want to act like they care. But at the end of the day, for example, when they gave in to giving ICE money, they're suckers. They get suckered in really easily by the Republicans. The Republicans call them a couple of words, and the Democrats believe it. I feel like the Democratic Party always tries to take the high road and do it the right way. And the other side is going so scorched earth that it takes so much more to try to do it the right way. I'm not saying go low, but I mean, at some point, you got to meet them a little bit in the middle. You have to be a little bit more aggressive with your message. I don't know if that's complacency or some of these people, these people are so close to understanding that the Democrats represent controlled opposition party and that we must do away with those who actually actively undermine the interests of democracy. They're so close. Because remember, the starting point for a lot of people is liberalism. Liberal. That's just how it is. A lot of people start off as liberals. Many of you started off as liberals. Every single one of you, as a matter of fact, myself included. We had some kind of start point where we were liberals. And we moved away from that, slowly but surely, through observation, through observing reality, through recognizing that the Democrats actually do not present the change necessary. What have people seen from the Democratic Party over the last year since Trump has been in office? We saw Melissa Hortman and her husband get murdered in their home, and no Republican really batted an eye compared to the response that Charlie Kirk got. And you see, again, our own president is lying and spewing hate every day. If I were a Democrat, I would probably be pretty scared about the things that I said, too. I have a lot of respect for Jasmine Crockett and Pete Buttigieg. I love them. They are really standing firm. Oh, God. Bruh. Democrats have folded a little bit lately to move things along, unfortunately, not in the way that we would like, because they don't want to see all these people not getting paid in a shutdown and our country not moving forward. Not saying it's 100% right, but it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't situations because they are largely out of power. Bruh. Don't give them that. Don't give them that. Has anybody been following elections that have happened over the past year? Democrats have flipped seats that were Republican. I know Texas one just got flipped, and they have been by large margins. So what does that tell you? It tells you that the Republicans are about to rig the next election because that's what's happening right now. True. How do you square the negative feelings towards Democrats with the fact that they're winning these elections? I square it because I feel like they're always playing catch up. It's true. So yeah, they've won some seats. But people are upset about Trump, and so they're voting for Democrats. I still don't think they're going to take the House next year. They would have never considered redistricting until the Republicans did it. Not saying that they should have, but it's like, what else are Republicans going to do first? Oh, that's so perfect. What would you say are the Democratic Party's strengths? They got really good health policies. They're for the greater good, all this stuff. How would you then respond to what somebody else said? They're out of power. They don't have the White House or the Senate or Congress, so what are they supposed to do? It's definitely a good point. However, you don't just lie down and say, oh, well, sorry, we can't. Yes, we don't have it, but that doesn't mean that they can't fight for it. And it's scary with some of the retaliation and things that are happening, but they need to stand firm. See? When you say you want to see the Democrats stand up and fight, what does that look like? Just getting the message right. You hear the Republican side, they'll spew nonsense about everything. And I'm not saying spew nonsense, but they can't get a clear, cohesive message out there, and they don't all stand together on that message. So no one knows, hey, we're fighting for you for this. They just think, hey, you're just locking the whole government up because you're being stubborn. Then they lose steam, and then they lose their people behind them. They just go belly up on the government shutdown. Oh, my God. There it is. There it fucking is. The whole blaming the Democrats thing was just a big Fox News story of let's blame the Democrats. But they had some real bargaining power there, and they just pushed in the chips and said, no, it's all right. I don't want to play this game anymore. It's like, no, if the Republicans are going to play this game, you got to play the game. We can't just sit around and not play. California's doing it the right way. They're like, okay, well, if you're going to take the seats from us, we're going to give ourselves more seats to counteract what you're doing. That's what we should be doing. This is the last thing I'm going to read from this article before I move on. Has anybody seen anything from the Democrats? Any candidate or public figure or someone locally that's made you say, oh, yeah, we need more of this. This is what we should be going for. Zoran Mamdani. Clear, concise messaging. It's exactly what everybody wants. It helps everybody. It's the perfect messaging because it's clear and concise, unlike Democrats. Just like Bernie. Bernie said the same things since the 80s. You've got to tax the billionaires. You've got to tax the upper class. He's never changed. That's the messaging. You've got to drill it into them. And Zoran did it. Man, it's beautiful. And then Diane comes in from the top row, 72 years old, white, Democrat, retired, says, Mike said it pretty clearly, and I can't really think of anything to add to that. Then they ask who else. Someone says Isaiah Martin. He doesn't hold back. He just went on Jubilee and went against like 20 conservatives. And to me, they got all embarrassed. He's asking them questions and then they get tongue twisted. They can't answer the question. Pete Buttigieg is a big one for me. Jasmine Crockett, she tells it like it is. I was going to say Mike said it pretty spot on. When people are saying what Mike said, do y'all mean you like Mamdani and Bernie? You like the idea of simple messaging or all of the above? Panth comes in and says, the Democratic Party needs to embrace voices that resonate with people. When you hear Bernie, he has energy because he really believes in what he's saying. It's the same reason Trump resonates with people, because he acknowledges some of the struggles that they're facing. Sure, he blames the wrong groups, but at least he voices it. This is literally, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I'm walking away. I'm walking away, dude. I'm done. There's nothing else I need to fucking say. We're here.
May Allah awaken the people and help them to see the evil doings of Israel and the United States.